Please take your seats, and in the meanwhile, while you go back to your seats, I would like to remind you that during this World Meeting, we have the privilege of having here in Rome the relics of some blessed and holy spouses. In particular, as you well know, in the San Giovanni Laterano Basilica, we have the relics of the holy spouses Martin, Luigi Martin, the father and mother of Santa Teresa de Lisieux, that have been taken from France for this World Congress. I invite you to go to the Basilica of San Giovanni to see these relics coming from France. Here with us, we have the honor and privilege. Can you hear me? Can you please raise the volume, because they say that they cannot hear me from the hall. So here with us instead we have the relics of Blessed Luigi Maria Beltrami Quattrocchi. In the relic shrine we have the bones of Luigi and Maria, the engagement ring that on March 15, 1920 Luigi gave to Maria for their engagement. And then we have an image of the Madonna of Pompeii, signed by Luigi and Maria in English, where they wrote in English to keep it the image always in his and Maria was writing to Luigi in English when she was writing about something very personal, when their love was expressed in English. And then in the shrine you can find also the gospel that they used to read together. This is usually kept in Naples in the Archdiocese by the Association Mistolino di Dio. Mistolino, for those listening to us in another language, is a very simple soup spoon that is used in domestic life, and Maria called herself the God's soup spoon, because they, together with her mother, during the war, they were serving soup to Jewish refugees, and therefore she gave herself the name of God's soup spoon, Mistolino di Dio in Italian. So I would like to introduce the panelists. We have Giustino Trince and Adriana Bizzarri. I would like to introduce them for those who were not with us. They have been married for 41 years. I have 2 kids and 2 grandchildren. They live and work in Rome. Adriana is coordinator of school coordinator of Cittadinanza Attiva Association, which is in charge for the poor canteen, and he's director of Caritas Roma. They are both committed to evangelization and charity, also as member of the parish cells of evangelization. They will be the moderator of our 6th panel on vocation and mission of family in the existential peripheries.
Benvenuti ai lavori di questo secondo panel della mattina, dedicato, come abbiamo sentito, al tema vocation and mission of families
in existential peripheries. We have 3 topics that we are going to discuss today together with the speakers. First, amongst the migrants, we are trying to understand how the family, as a pastoral caregiver, can welcome other family and especially migrants. The second, in drug addiction. In fact, having families that have problems like this, we will listen how families can help each other, also with specific service, etc., and how the church can help them. The third issue is when there is violence in the family, and this is about the value and the importance of the presence of a network of family able to understand the signs of a problem and be close to those who have violence. Hello, we are going to now introduce our speaker that we thank for being here with us and for the testimony that they are going to give to us. We will give only some biography of each of them, and of course we invite you to read their bios in the website Rome Family 2022. For each testimony, for each witness will have 15 minutes, and in order to be in line with the time and not to go beyond the time allotted to you, we will tell you when you still have 2 minutes. So we are going to introduce Isabelle van Coulenbroek and Françoise Delos. They are coming from Belgium. They live in Liège with their 2 kids. Isabelle is the assistant of the Bishop of Liège and is in charge for elderly and sick people. François is a legal expert fighting poverty. They both belong to Sant'Egidio community. François Isabelle will speak about migrants.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Good morning, everyone. Participating in this theological and pastoral congress is an honor, and it's very important for us as a couple, but it's also a responsibility to contribute within the church to a reflection about vocation and mission in existential peripheries. So we'd like to thank the Dicastery for organizing this event and for having invited us. In this panel, we were asked to look at the question of migrants that live in the existential peripheries of our world. These are peripheries that are geographical, and we have also human peripheries, geographical peripheries, because the victim of war, in exile, or the refugees come from far away. If it's true that great attention has been given to Ukrainian refugees and Syrian refugees, today who is thinking about women and men that are going away from Sudan, Sahel, because of the violence, terrorism, poverty, and draft, or les Grenias who live in refugee camps in Bangladesh. They very often live in human peripheries without any humanity. They live in a continuous flight from the country, and they of course risk being exploited at different levels and in different ways.
qui ont
all
péri
the refugees
dans la
that died
Méditerranée
in
depuis
Mediterranean
janvier
Sea
2021 sont un appel à
are
notre conscience.
launching an
Ils ne
appeal to
peuvent
our
laisser
conscience,
indifférents.
and we cannot really be
L'émigration
indifferent.
constitue un signe de
Migration
temps
is a
qu'il faut
sign
pouvoir
of time
comprendre.
that has to be
Dans
understood.
l'encyclique Fratelli
In
Tutti,
Fratelli
le pape
Tutti,
François
Pope
prend comme
Francis
exemple
is taking as
la
example
parabole du bon
the parable
Samaritain.
of the Good
Il
Samaritan.
écrit,
And he writes,
lorsque le prochain
when
est une
the
personne migrante, des défis complexes sont
neighbor
devant elle.
is a migrant,
Nos efforts
we
vis-à-vis des
have
personnes migrantes
particular
qui arrivent
problems,
peuvent se résumer en
and
4
we
verbes.
can use 4
Accueillir,
verbs: welcoming,
protéger,
protect,
promouvoir et
promote,
intégrer.
and
Ces 4 verbes, le pape François, on avait fait des titres de la
have with
Journée
us.
mondiale
And
des
these
migrants
were
et des
the
réfugiés en 2018.
used for the world youth world.
Accueillir
So he describes that welcoming means first of all offer to migrants and refugees greater possibility to have a legal status. The second verb, protect,
se décline
means
en toute une série
different
d'actions
actions.
pour la défense des droits et de la dignité des migrants
Means
et des réfugiés.
defending the rights and dignity of migrants and refugees.
essentiellement
Promote essentially
œuvrer
means to work
afin que
so
tous
that
les
all
migrants
migrants
et
and
les réfugiés
refugees
soient mis en condition
are enabled to
de se
realize
réaliser
themselves as
personnes.
persons.
Et le
And the
dernier
last
verbe,
verb, to
intégrer,
integrate,
se place
refers
sur le plan
to
des
the
opportunités
opportunities
d'enrichissement
for general
interculturel
intercultural
général
enrichment
du fait de la
due to the
présence
presence
des
of
migrants et des
migrants and
réfugiés.
refugees.
Dans ce même
In the
passage,
same
le pape
message,
disait,
the Pope said,
tout immigré
every immigrant who knocks at our door is an opportunity for an encounter with Jesus Christ, who identifies himself with a stranger of every age, whether welcomed or rejected. Looking at this situation, we also had the possibility to participate in the humanitarian corridors project that was launched by the community of Sant'Egidio, together with many other institutional partners, with governments and international organizations, Catholic organizations, other Christian denominations, and other religions. At the origin of this project is the refusal to continue to accept that thousands of people lose their lives in the Mediterranean Sea, like Abdurrahman Houg and the Odon from Sudan, that find their death in the Mediterranean Sea this year. During these journeys of hope, when many of them would have the right to obtain refugee status at the end of their asylum procedure. However, under European law, member states may issue humanitarian visas, which allow the holders to enter the territory of the state in question, and only that state. Once an agreement has been reached with the government, and it is currently the case with Italy, France and Belgium, the refugees are flown to the host country under safe and legal conditions. This is a project that is above all an initiative of civil society, of the Catholic movement, which involves seeking funds, especially for travel. Our family participated in the reception of refugees in Belgium. An agreement has been reached with the Belgian government, which has issued 150 humanitarian visas for vulnerable Syrian refugees, especially family. Once in Belgium, the refugees can apply for asylum, which will be processed quickly by the competent government services, less than 6 months usually. The specificity of the project is that local reception groups have been set up to welcome and allow the integration of refugees. In Liège, Belgium, we coordinated the reception of a Syrian Kurdish family of 5 people from the north of their country. The parents, Leila and Nihad, with 3 children aged 6, 12 and 14 years. Rahaf, Abdu, and Farah. They could settle in a house provided by Sant'Egidio. And during the first year in Belgium, we accompanied them with other volunteers, each one according to his or her skills. The accompanying consists, among other things, of guiding and accompanying them for administrative procedure, asylum application, registration in the civil registry of the city, insurance, healthcare, school registration, and guidance for children, possibility of learning French. Francois' mother and a friend took care of this to ensure that the family's means of subsistence are guaranteed while waiting for government grants. And we launched an appeal and mobilized many people for donation. We offer extracurricular activities like a School of Peace led by Youth for Peace, a group of students between 16 and 22 years old, and then accompany the mother, Laila, for medical examination necessary to treat serious epileptic disorders. Gradually, we had personal bonds that were created, moments of fraternity, sorrows and difficulties are shared. For our couple and our children, it was the opportunity to discover a new culture, but also to get closer to the horror of war, which is the mother of all poverties. With this accompaniment, our family grew. It became twice as big. The horizon were broadened. The complexity of refugee life became tangible to us. And for our children, who are 15 and 18 years old, was also an opportunity to discover and understand a different world. This commitment made us become, in a certain way, mother and father of new family. This experience enriched us and invited us to pray more for peace. But it also highlighted three main aspects. First of all, hospitality. It is the hospitality of the Good Samaritan who welcomes into his life the wounded man on the side of the road. It's the hospitality of the innkeeper that takes care of him. Alone we can resign ourselves and think that we're powerless in the face of this complex problem of migration. But if we are together, if we work all together in community with families, with other sisters and brothers, refugees left by the roadside can be welcomed and protected. It's a bit like the encounter of Jesus with Bartimaeus, Mark chapter 10, and I quote, Bartimaeus, a blind man who was begging, was sitting by the roadside. Jesus listens and responds to his call. And the Gospel concludes, immediately the man received his sight and he followed Jesus along the road. From now on, Bartimaeus is no longer at the side of the road, but on the road. He has been reintegrated into social life by Jesus. Through words, gestures, prayer, and the witness of love of the community, it is possible to integrate or to reintegrate migrants in our society while they were living in these existential peripheries. They are no longer considered as numbers, as faceless people, but as people who have a history made of joys, difficulties, fragilities, and strength, like everyone else. For migrants have many strength, their willingness to work with courage, and we know that there is a shortage of manpower in our country. Within the Church, there are new forces who contribute to the life of the community, notably with a strong and communicative faith. Gratuitousness is the evangelical gratuitousness, that is that of the companionship, spending time with one another, with someone who is perhaps different. It's the gratuity of a service in a world where nothing is free anymore. It's enhancing generosity, and it establishes a relationship. And it's important to give space to what is free, to what has no price, that is to say friendship, love, tenderness, and then generosity. It is true that today's world is more and more individualistic, but experience has shown us there is a great generosity in many people who sometimes don't know how to express it. This experience of welcoming refugees has shown us that one who asks receives. Many people have given their time, material and financial means. We can speak of multiplying generosity, or a sort of virtuous circle of good. It is with a shared love, with these weak forces, that the torn fabric of fraternity between mankind can be rebuilt. The project of humanitarian corridors of Sant'Egidio allowed us to receive about 5,000 refugees, very vulnerable, fragile families coming mainly from Syria, but also Afghanistan, Eritrea, and other African countries. It's like a drop in the sea compared to hundreds of thousands of people in exile around the world. But first of all, these are saved, rescued lives, reborn people, people who are regaining hope. Beyond the numbers, it's also a question of showing that it's possible to go over prejudices, to overcome them, and make things that are considered possible. In fact, thanks to the support they receive, the refugees are integrated into society of the host country and become actors of their own life, and in turn help in receiving and welcoming other refugees for translation, guidance, etc. It's a project that can be replicated, a pastoral experience that can be reproduced by families who can join in parishes, youth movement, Catholic movements, together with other Christian confessions and other religions. The coronavirus pandemic and the war in Ukraine show that today in the world we share a common destiny. On March 27, 2020, in St. Peter's Square, at the beginning of the pandemic, Pope Francis said that we are all in the same boat. This common destiny in a common home can be considered an opportunity as far as migration is concerned. In fact, it's the opportunity to help in building a renewed, rejuvenated society with new strength, new ideas. St. John Chrysostom said, "Many people today suspect those in need, questioning them about their origin, their lifestyle, their profession, their state of health. There are runaway slaves, foreigners, men who have left their homeland to come to your city, and you get angry about this? You should rather rejoice, because they ask for your help and consider this city as our mother." End of quotation. Yes, today's cities can be mothers who welcome, protect, and give hope. This can be possible if they are inhabited by communities, by families who have a hope in a better world, and who, nurtured by prayer and listening to the Word of God, are happy Christians who are witness of the joy of the gospel through hospitality and generosity for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabelle François, for your testimony. You've underlined the importance of devoting the same attention and the same welcoming approach to all migrants and refugees from whatever country they come from. the value of humanitarian corridors to save the lives of thousands of people. And then the four verbs with which Pope Francis in Fratelli Tutti summarized the efforts that we need to make towards migrants. And the four verbs are welcoming, protecting, promoting, and integrating. And therefore, the value of hospitality and generosity that are found in many individuals based on their Belgian experience. In our experience in Rome, we daily meet in railway stations, in soup kitchens, in shelters, in many parishes, religious communities, and charitable organizations of the Diocese of Rome and lay organizations. So we meet the face and stories of suffering of many migrants and refugees that come to Rome. We feel challenged together with many others by the wish to do more with the support of public institutions in order to have a significant impact on the full, let's say, welcome of these individuals. Let's move on to the second couple of speakers. Maria Paola Casanova, Saverio Santoro. They've been married since 2017. They have 2 children. They lived in Argentina, in Patagonia. Maria Paola is professor of theology and philosophy of care at the universities of Salta and Chubut. Valerio, who has been in Argentina since 2015 as a missionary, is in charge of the therapeutic community promoted by the Pope John XXIII community, in which both work and live. They will tell us about their mission regarding addictions.
Bueno, muchas gracias por la invitación.
Thank you
Como ya nos
for your kind
presentaron,
invitation.
somos María Paula Casanova, Argentina.
As was mentioned earlier, we are Maria Paola Casanova. I'm from Argentina, and Valerio Santoro, Italian. We've been married for 5 years and have 2 children, Luz and Alexis. We belong to the John XXIII community. We live in Argentina, in rehab, therapeutic community, where for 3 years we have been sharing our lives with men and women with addiction problems. We would like to tell you about our experience and the fruits of our experience, starting from the encounter of Jesus with the Samaritan woman at Jacob's well. We met thanks to the Pope John XXIII community in the context of this rehab facility. Valerio had traveled to Argentina as a missionary of the community, and I actually was coming from another city, and I went to Puerto Madryn to carry out a specific kind of work. In Genesis, we read that it is not good for man, male and female, to be alone. And this refers to that primeval loneliness, which, like a deep thirst in our souls, can be quenched only with a helper that is a partner, as Genesis states. This loneliness, this deep thirst for true relationships is usually found in so many people who try to quench this thirst by drinking deceitful water, which not only does not quench thirst, but makes it deeper, generating more loneliness and lovelessness. With the sacrament of marriage, the Lord gave us this water, which not only quenches our thirst, but which became in us, not by our strength, but by His mercy, has become, I was saying, in us, a spring of water gushing up to eternal life. And it is from this water, which flows from the sacrament of marriage, the basis of our family, the foundation, that we want to then give this eternal water to the thirsty that Jesus makes us find along our way, not only for them, but also for us, since as Pope Francis says in Amos Laetitia, and I quote, "The family must instead go forth from their homes in a spirit of solidarity with others. Married couples should have a clear awareness of their social obligations. With this, their affection does not diminish, but is flooded with new light." End of quote. A rehab community is not a large facility, but most of all, it is there to welcome in our family those who need help. The method we follow for addiction rehab is to share life directly with these individuals. Our approach is actually to share. We do not provide a service. We do not work to cure these people, but because we love them. And since we love them, then we can cure them and heal them. In our community, the family, work, daily life, it's all experienced there. The family with its good times and perhaps bad times, but that we all live through and overcome together. The treatment we provide is very simple. It's the treatment of truth, of responsibility, of commitment to oneself and to other people, of sacrifice, of fraternity, of a sense of belonging, of joy. The treatment of the encounter with the Absolute, which is not imposed, but that people can breathe. The direct sharing of experiences then frees the addict from the self-absorption that has led him or her to what keeps them prisoner, because they realize that they too have something to give and can help other people. They too help us. We too are called to change and grow. Jesus gives us the example of the Samaritan woman at Jacob's well who waits for him to give her something to drink.
La samaritana se entusiasma nell'escuchar de Jesús que él tiene para darnos un agua que sacia para siempre la
is
sed.
excited to hear from Jesus that he has water that quenches our thirst forever, and listens attentively when Jesus shows her that he knows her past and her present. Jesus knows our misguided searches for meaning and makes himself present to offer us his mercy and a full life. When the disciples found Jesus talking to the Samaritan woman, they asked each other why he would do that. Well, if we are with Jesus, sitting at the well where young people go to drink the water that does not quench their thirst in order to offer them a different kind of water, many will ask themselves and ask us the same question: why do you do it? Not getting involved with the existing peripheries is often a defense mechanism. Sometimes families refuse to accept reality, either out of shame or to avoid being judged, to avoid feeling frustrated as parents, or because the reality of addiction exceeds their strengths or personal or family abilities to cope with them.
For this
reason, it is necessary that our pastors and pastoral care workers know how to guide and support families that experience this problem, because when a member of the family is addicted, the whole family suffers the consequences, and in many cases this burden is just too heavy to be carried only within the intimacy of the family. The role of families in the issue of addictions is fundamental both for recovery and, unfortunately, if we think about the origin of the issue. Family ties are so important that when the family has not been able to be what it is called to be, even if it is often without its members being responsible for this, and this is why it is useless to feel guilty. But when the young person is not able to face what is happening to him or her, then they turn to those substances that allow them initially to free themselves from this burden. Many times, families are the ones that cause the initial problem, either by their absence or by their negligence, or even due to human impossibility, because they are not capable of living parenthood to the fullest, or because the economic circumstances forces them to work all day long, leaving the children in the care of whoever can watch over them or babysit them, or for so many other situations that exceed the will of those who are the protagonists in this story, sometimes also because of an excess of presence, when the parents actually hinder the growth of their children, their personal development, with a love that holds back, that is stifling. Therefore, on the road to recovery from addictions, the family also needs to be involved. The family needs to undergo a path of change, to identify mistakes that were made, to improve, to be reborn as new people together with their loved one.
a cualquier cosa sea,
The addicted person, irrespective of the addiction, whether it is alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, is in a condition of slavery. They are no longer free to choose. They feel obliged. They cannot see beyond this situation. And it is from this situation of slavery that the request for help arises. Give me some of this water, which does not mean that they have the willpower to embark upon a path of liberation on their own, but it is a beginning. It is here that those around them can play a prevailing role in helping them to move from anguish to the decision to embark upon a path of reconstruction. The family can, in these moments, take on a very important, albeit painful role. The family can show them that the road to recovery is the only help they want to give them, and that there are no other possibilities that can be found within the family, because loving implies setting limits and give order where it is lacking, not with force, but with the necessary firmness and with good example. At times like this, you might think, where do you have this living water? Are you more than our father Jacob? Said the Samaritan woman to Jesus. Well, fear can turn into panic and distrust, but it is necessary to make a step forward and trust other people, because although risky, this is often the only possibility of recovery for the person we love. This decision is so painful that many parents are not able to really go through and do it. Although it is a decision that stems from love, but they would rather see their child reject their help and not see him or her again, or worse, see them drugged in the street, dying little by little, with the hope of being able to recover him or her for life. It is important to bear in mind that addicts, the need to free themselves is stronger than the power of the slavery that holds them back. So this is why we must never give up and seek the necessary help to be able to offer this help when they are ready to receive it. Because good is stronger than evil, and man in his heart of hearts always tends towards good and always seeks good, although sometimes it looks for good in the wrong place. This is why it is worthwhile, like Jesus, or rather with Jesus, it is worthwhile to be at the well, waiting for the beloved person to accept our help.
The cry
of the addicted person has not only health or psychosocial connotations, but it is of a deeper nature. It is the stifling of man's inner being that determines the fall into the deception of drugs, or into that which keeps them enslaved, while promising them freedom. We consider that the drug problem is a problem of life meanings. Young people turn to addiction to fill a void of meaning. Man needs a reason to live, a reason that is greater than life itself. This is why professional help, although in many cases it is useful and even necessary, is not enough to free those who are imprisoned by addictions, since the main problem is the search for the meaning of life. It is the free help of the other that can guide their search so that it can be fulfilled. The inhabitants of Samaria, actually, they knew Jesus, the awaited Messiah, because they believed in the words of the Samaritan woman. It is not the Samaritan woman who changes the lives of inhabitants of Samaria, but it's Jesus who does this, even though he uses her to make himself known. We're not the ones who are going to change those who ask us for help, but it is Jesus. Jesus who through us frees them from slavery, restoring to them their dignity as children of God. Overcoming addiction is a true process of conversion that implies, at least implicitly, a relationship with God. It is not enough to abandon oneself trustingly to a human institution such as a rehab community might be, but it is a matter of inner abandonment to the truth of oneself, and therefore of finding the profound meaning of our lives, which in man is to recognize himself as a child of
Caminar
God.
al lado de quien transita el
To walk
camino de la
alongside
liberación de
those
las
who walk the
adicciones
path of
exige un
liberation
triple
from
trabajo de
addiction
crecimiento
requires
y
a
purificación
threefold
personal
work of
en
personal
relación
growth
a
and
Dios,
purification
ya que
in the
debemos
relationship
confiar
with God,
plenamente en
because
Él,
we
que
must
es el único que
completely
puede
trust
liberar al
Him.
hombre de su
He
sinsentido,
who alone can
de su
free man
soledad
from his
originaria,
meaninglessness,
en
from
relación
his
a los
original
hombres que
loneliness.
muchas veces
We
estarán
also
cerrados
have to
y tendremos que seguir
trust in the
creyendo en su
relation to men who
pertenencia
will often be
fundamental
closed, and we
a
must
Dios
continue to believe
y
in their
una
fundamental
inviolable
belonging to
dignidad
God
en
and in
relación a
their
nosotros
inviolable
mismos, que
dignity.
tenemos que tener
And also we have to
confianza en
trust,
nosotros, pero una
also
confianza que se
have trust
apoya
in our
en la
relationship with
fidelidad de
ourselves.
Dios.
We must have self-confidence that is based on the fidelity to God.
Solo si somos libres podremos acompañar a otros en el
Only
camino
if
de la
we're free
libertad.
will we be able to accompany others along the path to freedom, a freedom that is never definitive, but which requires constant work that involves continually dealing with one's own truth, because we all share the same basic condition, the path from the slavery of sin to the freedom of the children of God. For this reason, the path to follow, together with those who have addiction problems, that is, together with those who could not or did not know how to face their reality and only wanted to evade it by resorting to the use of substances or harmful behaviors, is to recognize one's own truth by making one's own life experience available to others and walking together along the path that we still have ahead of us. The failure of relapses makes us feel like the apostles who lived the cross of Christ as a failure. We had hoped, said those who were traveling to Emmaus. Others returned to the daily life of before knowing Jesus, going back to fishing. But the apparent failure of Jesus on the cross instead is transformed into victory with the resurrection.
Cuando perdemos la pelea contra las adicciones,
when we lose the fight against addiction and death snatches away the lives of those we love and those we accompanied in the attempt to save them, the temptation of being discouraged is really great. Only trust in the one who knows how to make all things new, and the hope that with that definitive embrace, the chains that we are unable to break will be broken forever, instead gives us the strength to remain committed to the fight against the scourge of addictions, sharing that living water that allows us to live true life.
Tengo sed, dice Jesús en la cruz.
I thirst, says Jesus on the cross. Mother Teresa understood that it is in the poor that Jesus wants to be quenched. We too want to quench the thirst of Jesus in our brothers and sisters who thirst for life, with that same water that flows from the sacrament of marriage for eternal life. But we do not want to stop there. We want everyone who drinks of this water to be able to experience Jesus in such a way that they too can say, like the Samaritans, it is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves. And we know that you're truly the Savior of the world. Thank you.
We thank Maria Paola and Valerio, who with their witness and of course they were really touched and moved by what they said, but they saw that addiction is really connected with family, with God, etc. Everything is involved and is not sufficient to be only supported by therapy to get rid of drugs, but we have to be really involved holistically. These people are called for a total change in order to identify their mistakes, to identify and to have a rebirth as new person with the beloved one. And now we have the last speaker of the panel, titled When There is Violence in the Family. The speakers are Christoria Welland and Michael Akong that come from the United States. Cristori is a clinical psychologist, a Catholic specialized in the treatment and prevention of domestic violence. Her husband, Michael, that have been married for 30 years, was a biochemical researcher, and lately he's in charge of the technical IT and logistical organization of the courses that they held together. They are also the organizer of Pax in Familia, which is an international organization for peace and abuse prevention in families.
When there is violence in the family, if an enemy had reviled me, that I could bear. Enough. Pope Francis, on January 1st of this year, said, "How much violence is directed against women? Enough. To hurt a woman is to insult God, from whom a woman took on our humanity." Pope Francis on domestic violence on February of 2021.
Hoy sigue habiendo mujeres que sufren violencia, violencia psicológica, violencia verbal, violencia física.
Pope Francis says
violencia
there are
sexual.
families who suffer physical violence, and his prayer intention was for women, families who face physical violence. It's shocking how many women are beaten, insulted, and raped.
Violadas.
The various forms of ill treatment that many women suffer are acts of cowardice
Son una cobardía y una degradación
and a degradation of all humanity, of men and of all humanity.
Los testimonios de las víctimas
The testimonies of the victims who dare to break their silence are a cry for help,
de socorro.
says Pope Francis, and that we cannot ignore. We must not look the other way.
Recemos por las mujeres que son víctimas
Let us
de
pray
la
for women who are
violencia,
victims of violence, that they may
para
be
que sean
protected by
protegidas por la
society
sociedad, y para que
and
su
have their
sufrimiento
sufferings considered
sea
and heeded by
considerado
all.
y sea escuchado por todos. Hoy sigue.
Let us call upon the Holy Spirit. This is Michael Akong reporting from the 2022 World Meeting of Families from the Vatican. Today, we report on the alarming increases of violence in the family, especially in the current pandemic now going on 3 years. We have a special guest with expertise in family violence, Dr. Christoria Welland-Akong. She has a doctorate in psychology with 25 years in the field of domestic violence, in addition to 50 years as a catechist. Dr. Welland, can you tell us how serious domestic violence is and if it also affects Catholic families?
Hi, Michael. I'm so grateful to have you as my interviewer today. And we're so grateful to be here, to be able to talk about this topic and share with all of you. Domestic violence is a pandemic. Violence against women is a global problem of pandemic proportions, according to the World Health Organization. It affects 1 in 3, or 30% of women in their lifetime. Violence against women causes devastating harm to women's lives and that of their children. Sometimes it leads to death. Osinachi Mwachiku was a Nigerian gospel singer who was allegedly murdered by her husband in April 2022. Their pastor had convinced her not to leave the marriage and to forgive her husband and be reconciled on many occasions. I think now would be a good moment to pause for a short commemoration of all those women and people who have lost their lives due to domestic violence.
But Catholic families can't be affected by violence in the same way, right?
Not in Catholic families. Studies show that there is no difference in the rate of domestic violence among Catholics than among people in the general population. So yes, there is lots of violence in Catholic families too, and among Catholic teens and dating partners.
So how many Catholic women specifically experience domestic violence?
In 2020, there were over 500 million Catholic women aged 15 and above. If we apply the global average of 30% victims of domestic violence, that comes to over 150 million Catholic women who have experienced physical or sexual violence at least once in their life. If we lower that to 25% to account for the lack of firm domestic violence data for Catholics, that is still more than 125 million women. Let me repeat, 125 million Catholic women.
Has the coronavirus pandemic had any effect on violence against women?
The coronavirus has increased domestic violence worldwide. There are increases in emotional, family, financial, and employment stress, alcohol abuse as a coping strategy, and sales and use of firearms. Both incidents of violence and deaths have increased worldwide.
Domestic violence could mean many things. Can you define it more specifically?
What is domestic violence? It refers to behavior by an intimate partner or ex-partner, male or female, that causes harm and can include physical aggression, sexual coercion, psychological abuse, economic abuse, and controlling behaviors. All women are at risk. Violence can happen to any woman in any country, regardless of culture, religion, or economic status. In countries where women have less equality, there is a higher prevalence of violence against women.
What do Jesus and the Church teach about marriage?
In the Catholic Catechism, what is the divine plan for marriage? It is meant to be a communion of life and love. It seems that domestic violence violates God's plan for the family.
So as pastoral agents, how do we even begin to approach this vast problem?
We'll use the see, judge, and act approach. The first step is to see and learn. What are the facts about domestic violence worldwide, including in Catholic families? Judge. The second step is to ask and discern, or judge. How can we learn more about domestic violence among Catholics and apply Catholic social teaching? Act. The third step, part 1. What can and should we do to respond in the now to the immediate needs of abused women, their children, and the men who abuse? Act. The third step, part 2. What can and should we do to address the root causes of domestic violence? Understanding these will lead to violence prevention strategies.
So as pastoral agents, what indications might you notice that could be warning signs of violence in a family?
Some warning signs. For all pastoral agents, notice if the woman is silent in the presence of her husband, shows fear of her partner, has bruises, or wears long sleeves in all weather. You may come upon her weeping alone in the church. Notice if her husband is being openly controlling or abusive, if their children are failing at school, showing anxiety or depression, or are being aggressive themselves. One of many risk factors for domestic violence is alcohol. In over 50% of cases, alcohol is involved in domestic violence incidents.
Can you tell us some of the effects that domestic violence can have on women?
Back it up, you missed it. Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
The effects that domestic violence can have on women.
Back it up, you missed it. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Where's this? Excuse me. Let me have yours. The effects of violence on women could be worst of all death, also physical and sexual injuries, disability, chronic health conditions, miscarriage and abortion, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicidal ideation and behavior, and the inability to parent effectively. The social effects of domestic violence. Experiencing domestic violence also puts women and their children at greater risk of increased poverty, homelessness, sexual and labor exploitation, being trafficked, potentially fatal sexually transmitted infections like HIV or AIDS. In my thirst, they gave me vinegar to drink.
Does witnessing violence affect children?
The effects of exposure to domestic violence on children are many and devastating. Be careful. Children need love and safety. Children do not need to be exposed to domestic violence. Terror, sadness, and helplessness are just some of the emotions and consequences that children exposed to violence can face. Children see, children do. What parents model to their children has the most influence in a child's life, including when it comes to transmitting violence and abuse down the generations.
Go back where you came from! Learn to speak English! Go back where you came from!
Showing a short video. With the text, children see and children do.
Since violence is a huge problem in our Catholic families, how are the teachings of the Magisterium guiding us towards a pastoral response?
St. John Paul II's teaching on love and equality. In his document, Familiaris Consortio, he teaches love is the fundamental and innate vocation of every human being. In Mulieris Dignitatem, he teaches that men and women are equal before God. Pope Francis has stated that Christ's teaching on women changed history. Christ's doctrine on women changed history, because up to that moment, the woman was second class. The woman before Jesus is one thing, the woman after Jesus is another. Jesus dignified woman and put her on the same level as man. Both are the image and likeness of God, both. Not men first and then women a bit lower. No, both. Jesus showed love and respect to women. We all know the parable of the Good Samaritan in Luke's Gospel. We've heard it several times. What if the assaulted person in his parable had been a woman? Acceptable customs still need to be eliminated. The verbal, physical, and sexual violence that women endure in some marriages contradicts the very nature of the conjugal union. Jesus said, "You did it to me." As Pope Francis teaches, if we dare to go to the fringes, we will find him there. Jesus is already there, in the hearts of our brothers and sisters, in their wounded flesh, in their troubles, and in their profound desolation. Catholic social teaching and domestic violence. For 2,000 years, the Church has reached out to the sick, the injured, and those who are oppressed, not fearing to stand up for the poorest and the most neglected. Those who suffer domestic violence are some of these people. Are we to ignore or minimize the needs of women who suffer because the violence is in their marriage and family?
Should we be concerned about those 125+ million Catholic women and their families? Is there a way to integrate the current state of knowledge about domestic violence with the teachings of the Church and then come up with an action plan for pastoral agents?
Yes, there is a way. So, what are we going to do about it? Everyone has a part to play. Bishops, priests, seminarians, religious, family life ministers, educators, catechists, parents, and youth. The South African Catholic Bishops' Conference Justice and Peace Commission, in their letter of June 2020, wrote, "We as Church have contributed to this scourge through our denial, our silence, our resistance, and our lack of preparation. Forgive us." In preparation for the Synod in 2023, some recent research from Catholic Charities and Catholics for Family Peace in the United States shows that today, as in the past, the priest is still the first person that many Catholic victims of domestic violence approach to seek counsel and help. However, priests are often unaware of the available resources, thus the importance of priests being educated on this topic. A few first steps for all. Get educated about domestic violence, including in the Magisterium. Listen to those involved and learn. Know your local resources. Respond and accompany with the love of Jesus. Teach and share your knowledge. Help to prevent violence in Catholic homes and schools. From the USCCB's Pastoral Framework 2021, Writing on Responses to Domestic Violence. Educate the faithful on church teaching about the dignity of each person made in the image of God. Encourage those who use violence, as well as families and victims, to seek resources and support. Engage by offering spiritual and material support for victims, trainings, and lists of resources.
Having a plan to intervene in the moment is really important, but is there a way to prevent violence in the first place?
Preventing violence against women and promoting equality are top priorities of the World Health Organization. What are some prevention strategies? We can use research-based practices to teach violence prevention strategies, and we can also incorporate the riches of our faith and spirituality into these teachings. We can also help prevent dating violence and child abuse. We can help prevent all interpersonal violence.
Is it better to organize a pastoral response in a grassroots or a top-down manner?
Grassroots co-workers in family peace. We recognize two such couples in our midst, Therese and Jean-Emmanuel Ngamo from Cameroon, Alfredo and Marina Davila from Ecuador, and other colleagues who are here from many other countries. Top-down is also important. We recognize the vital importance of large-scale, long-term interventions. The government plays a vital role, as can the Church, at the level of the Vatican, Episcopal conferences, and dioceses.
If you could speak to the Holy Father about this problem, what more would you ask him to do?
First, I would thank His Holiness in the name of all women, children, and men for his teachings and his loving concern. I would ask him to establish an international commission and center at the Vatican to conduct deeper studies and to educate clergy, religious, and the laity on compassionate and effective pastoral responses to domestic violence, to establish violence prevention strategies in all Catholic evangelization and catechesis at every stage of life, to extend this to every diocese and parish in the world. We ask this through the intercession of the Holy Family. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, hear our prayer.
Thank you, Dr. Wellen, for your experience and expertise in this sensitive and important topic, and thanks to all of you for your attention. Dr. Wellen will have some free resources after the session. This is Michael Akong signing off for now and asking the Lord for peace and love in all the families in the world affected by domestic violence.
Thank you.
Grazie a Cristoria e Michael.
Thank you, Cristoria and Michael, for this very important contribution, which increases in us all the awareness of the incredible spread of these situations and the complexity and the devastating impact that this has on victims, but also on the entire family, especially children, and how all this should also engage and challenge Catholic families, first of all, because they can be directly affected by this violence, and also because they can provide support to women who are victims of violence. Let us wrap up this panel, thanking all the participants, those who have joined us from far, far away, and in particular our speakers for the richness of their testimonies and the insights that they have provided to us. And praise to the Lord for the gifts and the hopes that we are sharing. Bon appétit, and I wish you a pleasant continuation of the Congress.
Grazie.
Thank you. Well, okay, so before letting you go, right before lunch, I would like to give you a few practical announcements. I would like to remind you that in view of tomorrow afternoon's Mass at 6:30 p.m.
Excuse me. As Ms. Gabriela Gambino wraps up with some final housekeeping details for the participants here in the Paul VI Hall at the World Meeting of Families, we will sign off for now, and there will be a lunch break, and the participants will come back here at Rome time at 3:30 for the continuation and afternoon session of the World Meeting of Families. Thank you for joining us. My name is Devin Watkins. Laudetur Jesus Christus.
Stola verde, stola verde. Ricordatevi comunque di portare il badge, è importante per accedere alla piazza, mi raccomando, e questo vale per tutti. Bene, siamo giunti al termine. Scusate, un'altra informazione importante, dopo lo ripeterò anche dopo pranzo, ma oggi pomeriggio, alla fine della nostra sessione di lavoro, ci saranno i pullman qui fuori per il trasferimento nelle parrocchie romane, per il trasferimento di tutti i delegati che desiderano recarsi nelle parrocchie per la serata. Durante l'ora del pranzo, adesso, i delegati riceveranno una mail con il numero dell'autobus che gli viene assegnato. Dopo pranzo io vi leggerò questo elenco con i numeri che corrispondono ai vari gruppi di delegati, e l'importante è che poi alle 17:30 vi troviate qui fuori, dove ci saranno 15 punti di accoglienza in corrispondenza degli autobus con il vostro numero. Bene, usciamo adesso per il pranzo ricordandovi di lasciare i ricevitori della simultanea, tenendovi le cuffie che sono personali. Vi invito a prendere il box lunch, sempre consumandolo all'esterno della città del Vaticano, e di rientrare alle 15 per riprendere le sessioni di lavoro. Grazie e buon pranzo.